welcome if this is your first webinar, and if it isn't your first webinar with Content Formula, then welcome back, and thanks very much for joining us. So today we're going to be talking about using Microsoft Viva at the center of your digital workplace. And I've got Joe and John from Content Formula, and we're going to be discussing various different kind of elements of Microsoft Viva. And I'll give a quick summary as to what we're going to talk about in a second, but I thought let's just do some introductions so that we can kind of kick things off. So my name's Alex. I'm going to be hosting the webinar today, and I've basically going to be going through kind of various different chapters on kind of Microsoft Viva and how it might be able to help you in your digital workplace. But I'll hand over to Joe Perry to introduce himself now.
Hey there, so I'm Joe Perry, I'm Head of Technology at Content Formula, and today I'm going to be showing you through some of the useful features of Viva Connections. Over to you, John.
Hi everyone, I'm John Scott, I'm the Head of User Experience at Content Formula, and I'll be talking about Viva more generally and some of the other apps within the Viva suite.
Perfect. All right then. So so as we've kind of been mentioning, this topic today that we're going to talk about is Microsoft Viva within making it the center of your digital workplace. And we're going to go through a variety of kind of different elements. So we're going to be talking about the elements within Microsoft Viva. And then we're going to be talking about how Microsoft Viva can be used for integration within the digital workplace and how you can have a really nice integrated employee experience using Viva Connections. Then we're going to demo various different kind of aspects of how Viva can be used within Microsoft. So Joe will take you through different user experiences and how Viva can be pulled together to construct dashboards and pull in various different kind of functionality from different systems outside of Microsoft. And then we're going to go through some key considerations that you'll want to think about when you're actually adopting Viva and then implementing it as well. And there's also going to be some polls and that you guys can engage with throughout the webinar. And also there is a question section. So if you guys have questions, please feel free to go through and type those in, and we'll come to those at the end. But yeah, we'll just kick things off just by going through who Content Formula are, and it might help give a bit of context as to kind of why we're talking about what we're talking about today. So Content Formula, we are a digital workplace consultancy. We've been operating for around or over 15 years now. Dan Hawtrey, the managing director, set up Content Formula, I think 17 years ago now it is. And since then, we've been building digital workplace solutions within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So our bread and butter is intranets, but we do various different systems ranging from learning management systems to policy management systems. But the main kind of thread that runs through all of those solutions is Microsoft 365. And we've been a Microsoft partner now, a gold partner for a number of years. And we basically, we utilize the tools that they give us to help you achieve various different kind of requirements within your organization. And a lot of our philosophy is that we are very business focused. We don't kind of think about the technology first. We think about your business and kind of what you're trying to achieve, and then the technology follows that. So that's kind of how our kind of culture works. We're very kind of Microsoft native. We like to stick within the Microsoft ecosystem, but we also utilize kind of various different off-the-shelf products which really strongly connect and integrate with Microsoft, whether that be through SharePoint or through Microsoft Teams. But there's a few there that are on the screen. We've got Live Tiles, which is a kind of an intranet out of the box. We've got LMS 365, which is a learning management system, which helps you deliver training through SharePoint, Teams, mobile app. And then we've got Zoralia there, which is actually Content Formula's own solution that we've created, which helps you with kind of policy management, including distribution, and also kind of attestations and making sure you're kind of getting confirmations from your employees that they've read policies and things like that. So we've got a lot of different experience with different kind of with different solutions. And the clients that we work with range from very kind of small clients, there may be 50 users, sort of large, but also bigger organizations. So so we've had kind of lots of different experiences that help give us a good knowledge base on how organizations like to implement Microsoft. whether it be through an intranet or a learning management system. But what I'm going to now do is I'm going to hand over to John to introduce us to what Viva exactly is.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, so if you just go to the next slide, please. So yeah, we hear people talk about Viva often as one sort of thing, but actually, and you may know this already if you've looked at any of the Microsoft sort of demos and things like that, but actually it's made up of 4 separate apps, and they're listed on the screen here. So first of all, there's Viva Insights, there's Viva Topics, there's Learning, and then also there's Connections. So I'm going to quickly talk through the first 3 there and give you the highlights of what those things are, what they do, and how businesses that we work with are starting to use them. It's still quite early days. These apps are fairly new still, so not many companies have been using them for a very long time, or even have even started using them. So, but I can talk to you about what those ones are, and then the last one there, Connections. That's one that we'll give a bit more focus on in this session. Basically because it's the one that is, hence the name, it's the one that connects everything a bit more and is less of a kind of isolated app that does one particular thing. It's a bit of a, turns your digital workplace into a sort of a hub. And so it's probably the most interesting for most people. And so we'll focus more on that one. But yeah, that being said, let's go through them. First up, Alex, if you can go to the next slide, please.
Before we do that, I have got a poll. Yeah, absolutely, which I completely forgot to launch before this this section started. So my apologies. But it'd be good to hear how you guys, the audience, how your experience or what your experience is with Microsoft Viva at the moment. So I've just launched a poll, and the question is, what is your experience with Microsoft Viva so far? So you've heard of it, but not using it. Maybe you're intrigued by it. You've heard of it, you're not using it, but you definitely know that you want to start using it. You've recently started using it and you want to use it a lot more. You might also be experienced with Microsoft Viva and want to take things even further. And I have to say at the moment, interestingly, we've got a third split across heard of it, not using it, and intrigued by it. A third heard of it, not using it, but want to start using it. A third recently started using it and want to use it a lot more. So at the moment, there's not a lot of the audience that are actually quite experienced with Microsoft Viva. Any thoughts, guys, as to why that might be?
Really, yeah, just to my last point, it's relatively new. I mean, I think it's been over a year now that it's been out, but these things take time to for especially large companies to adopt. First of all, you have to kind of kick the tires and see what it's all about. Initially, when it was kind of revealed as well, it was all quite vague as to what it actually did, to be honest. So it's taken a while to get into that and understand it a bit more. So that's probably why.
And I'll just add to that, only recently you can start extending it as well. So up until kind of turn of the year, you couldn't really add much to it. It was kind of, this is Viva, this is what it does, this is Viva Connections, and that's how it's going to be. But now we can actually enhance it, we can integrate it, we can shape it to how we want to start using it, which I think will help a lot more organizations adopt it as well.
Yeah,
absolutely. Cool, thanks guys. So I've closed that poll now. Can you guys see my screen again?
Yeah, we can see the 4. If you can just stay on this one for a second. So is it okay for me to go take over again here, Alex? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So yeah, just before we actually go into the individual apps here, actually something else that's worth noting is just the sort of the background as to why Microsoft have gone in this direction as well with Viva. Why have they launched this product or suite of products called Viva? In the past, they had SharePoint as an intranet platform. It used to be on-premise, on your servers in your company. They moved to the cloud, or they started offering a cloud version of that. But it was still very much the same product, almost, SharePoint. And one thing that SharePoint always lacked really was a sense of that kind of that employee hub, that brought together different aspects of what employees needed as part of their digital employee experience. So elements of the things we see here, knowledge-based type content, learning and LMS type content, that sort of thing, and connecting to other systems. You could do it all, but you had to sort of use SharePoint as a framework and often build those components. So companies like us would help companies to bespoke build components that would sit on SharePoint, but would then kind of connect up their digital workplace, connect to other systems, provide them with these tools. And Microsoft then decided that they would actually start to provide this service as part of Microsoft 365. They would actually start to create a bit more of a hub, the glue things that employees need in intranet and a digital workplace, bring them a bit more and into one more sort of seamless experience. And that's what really Viva is trying to do. And increasingly, is doing that, because it's adding more and more features. It's becoming more interconnected as time goes on. So yeah, let's go into the next slide then, please, Alex. And yeah, let's start off with learning. Okay, so learning, as the name suggests, involves the delivery of learning content through Viva Learning. It is a mechanism for serving up learning content that is from other providers. So it could be content from LinkedIn Learning, it could be content from another LMS called Cornerstone, or indeed one that we help implement, which is LMS 365. It's a kind of an aggregator of those different platforms for learning content that just delivers that into a more integrated way within an employee's workday. Most obviously through Teams, for example. We see here my kind of personal recommendations from learning for me that are delivered through Teams. And the thing that it isn't compared to other LMSs is that it doesn't actually provide that kind of full experience in terms of accreditations and testing and certifications that LMS systems can deliver, can give to award to people, and you can configure. It doesn't go as deep as that in the experience, but it's more about that kind of delivery engine and mechanism. So it does do recommendations by artificial intelligence. So it will make recommendations for course content based on what the system knows about me and perhaps what courses I've chosen to do before, or that have been assigned by me by my manager before, or based on just other things that I look at on Microsoft 365. There's this thing called Office Graph behind everything that happens on Microsoft 365. It does learn about your your kind of knowledge areas and your habits and the people you work with, and it uses that information to decide that certain things are potentially interesting to you, and that's one of the ways that it recommends these courses. Also, though, it does allow your line manager to assign courses for you to do, and they're delivered to you via Viva Learning. But they again, there's no real kind of follow-up and testing and attestation that you've done these things. It's more just a kind of a loose recommendation for you to do them, and then that's it. It doesn't really have the kind of the audit trail and all that kind of stuff built into it. So if you just go to the next slide, please, Alex. So one thing you can also do is you can tailor the courses that are being suggested to you by setting your interests. So depending on the interests you set, that could then recommend different training or learning courses from different platforms. Sorry, I got a bit of a frog in my throat. And if you go to the next slide, please, Alex. Also, as I mentioned, it's heavily integrated with Teams. So not only do you kind of see that catalogue of courses that you can choose to do in the Teams interface, but also these cards, these kind of cards can be displayed for Viva Learning courses in the chat. So you can kind of tag or pin a course recommendation within a chat interface within Teams, and it'll appear something like this. So you could just be saying to Alex here, Alex, check out this course, and add that kind of course card and it gives all the relevant information. It's not just like a little hyperlink or something. It's a bit more of a rich link, if you like, a rich snippet, which gives more information. And those cards can be used in other ways as well, where that we'll see with other parts of Viva. So yeah, next slide, please, Alex. Yeah, like topics as well, which we're going to look at next. Learning content also appears in search, in Microsoft Search. So you will, when doing a general search and you're seeing files from your SharePoint environment, you're seeing people, you're seeing sites, SharePoint sites, you may also see Viva learning modules or courses that are a match for the search terms you've added. And so this is a kind of, it's a good example of why learning is a good delivery mechanism that better permeates your general experience in Microsoft 365. Whereas if you were just using a separate LMS, and generally speaking, you're going to have to ask users to go to that LMS to search for a course. They're not going to just have courses appearing in their Microsoft search, generally speaking. And so it just kind of connects the dots a bit more in that way. Next slide, please, Alex.
John, a quick question. Do staff members and employees actually complete the training actually inside of Viva, or will they be taken away to where that training comes from and then complete it in the source where it's come from?
They do in some cases. So I think at the moment LinkedIn Learning is the only one that allows you to actually consume the content inside of the Teams experience. And if you've hooked up another LMS like Cornerstone, LMS 365, well, actually LMS 365 can do in Teams as well, can't you? But not within Viva Learning. But if some other LMS, it's going to send you out to that LMS. So you'll click the link and you'll go outside of Teams to that environment. But yeah, LinkedIn Learning is fully embedded, obviously, because it's Microsoft owned. So I expect that's why.
Of course.
So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so yeah, then also there's this recommendation functionality that allows you to recommend courses to colleagues, which will make it appear in their feed. So a bit of kind of like peer-to-peer curation, I guess. And the next slide. If you're a manager, you can assign courses to people. You do get some feedback on whether or not they've done it or they're in progress, but that's about it. You don't get much more granular information. You can't have them do a test to check they've really understood it or anything like that. If there is a test, it would be in the actual course that is on another LMS. So if you had a Cornerstone course or something that had a test at the end of it, they could complete that test in Cornerstone, but it won't feed back to this dashboard. You won't be able to see the results, whether they passed it or not. You'll just be able to see if they did it. So it's not a full LMS. Just to reiterate that point, with the delivery mechanism. And that's the best way to think of it, really. It's a learning content aggregator and recommendations engine only. It's not a full LMS, but it is a neat way to better integrate LMS content into your more general digital employee experience. Okay, so that's learning in a nutshell. Let's move on and to the next one, which is topics. Okay, so topics is really a kind of knowledge management tool. It's a bit like having an internal Wikipedia, if you like, where if you've got particularly relevant topics to your industry, they will have a page of information about that topic, where you'll have things like important guides or documentation, or people who know about this topic and are the experts, and so on. So to give you a recent example, we've been working with a house builder who are looking at using topics, and we're working on designing the setup for them, and they'll have things like technical information about things like loft insulation. So there'll be a topic page for loft insulation, and then it'll have spec sheets for the different types of loft insulation they've got. It will have information on the people who are the experts in loft insulation. It will have things like their suppliers for the loft insulation materials, and all those kind of things will be contained in these topic pages that then can easily be embedded in a chat. If somebody's asking in Teams or Yammer or something like that, does anyone know, or somebody who can deal with this loft insulation project that we've got, whatever, they can actually easily link to that topic page, which will then send somebody to this sort of single source of truth with everything that the company knows about loft insulation. So it's a neat way to kind of manage your organizational knowledge. And one of the things that is also neat about it is that the AI from Office Graph that I was talking about earlier, that will actually recommend topics to an administrator based on what the content it sees going through Microsoft 365. It will pull out particular things, like there might be an initiative that's constantly mentioned by people in communications and things. It might be this one here, SOAR. If this is an initiative, it might be, it would suggest to the administrator, we think that there should be a topic page for SOAR. And then the administrator of topics can say whether or not they agree. And if they do, a topic page gets created and it gets populated with the content that the AI thinks is relevant, and then the admin can curate that and improve that, add to that, and make it kind of the finished article. Well, not the finished article because it will ever evolve, but they'll make sure it's totally relevant and not got some gibberish in there or whatever. But also the administrator can just manually create topics as well. If the AI hasn't picked it up or suggested it, they can just do it manually. So it's sort of semi-automated. So also it can surface questions and answers around a given topic through Yammer as well. And yeah, as I said, the links to the topic appear across Microsoft 365 whenever something is mentioned. In a Teams chat, you can easily tag in a topic and send somebody to that topic page, and it can be consumed in Teams and elsewhere, the information. So next slide, please, Alex. I think same points, but just shows you, yeah, in a Teams chat, as I was saying, here Crystal's posted in Teams and she's linked to the SOAR project, and it has this kind of like mini card that pops out when a user hovers over SOAR. It gives them the broad detail what SOAR is. So if they're wondering what's this SOAR thing that they've mentioned, they can hover over it, they see the detail. Oh, okay, right, that's what it is, and then they can click in to get the full topic page. It's obviously particularly useful with new people in the organization as well. So if your company's got a high turnover for whatever reason, a lot of transient staff, something like topics could really help to make sure that they have the knowledge at their fingertips, even if they're new in the door. Yeah, so if you go to the next slide, please, Alex.
Of course.
Okay, so then we've got the kind of the suggested files and pages. So this is sort of if you do a search, and you'll see topics that are suggested, and also the admin would have a view like this where they see things that are being suggested by the system, and they can choose whether or not these things are indeed correct and they should be put into a topic page, or they should become a topic in their own right. So that's, I think, the last one on topics. That's topics in a nutshell. Maybe you've got questions about that, so please do ask them at the end, and we'll try and get to those. Next slide, please, Alex. That's insights. So yeah, we'll go and look at insights. So insights is really about oh, sorry, there was a previous note on the slides before on learning and topics, is that there's a kind of an upgrade license to get the full functionality of those things. So there is a kind of a very basic level that is free, but then if you want to get the full functionality of those, it's a kind of an upgrade in terms of an extra license you have to buy. And then the same is true of Viva Insights. We'll come to what that difference is in a second. So for free, if you like, you get this personal insights, which are basically it's information that Microsoft Graph has gathered about your work habits and things like, how long you spend in meetings, how long you get for focus time between meetings, and so on, so that sort of thing. What your work hours are in terms of when are you active at, in the evening, or just during the sort of the typical work day and stuff like that. And it tries to give you pointers and information to help you improve your personal productivity. And so that's what it does here. And then if you go to the next screen, Alex, it also monitors your interactions across different channels like Teams, email, Yammer, and so on. and it tries to help you and suggests things like that you haven't followed up on this thing that you said to Audrey that you would do, or that you normally do with Audrey and you haven't got one scheduled. Maybe you forgot to extend the invite for another 6 months to a recurring meeting. So it keeps track of things like that, identifies potential things that you know, balls that you've dropped, so to speak, and helps you to pick back up and ensure that you don't lose the thread of that process. So that's, you know, again, can be quite useful. And indeed, I think that you get emails about this as well, reminders to say, you know, you said you'd email Dan this attachment and you never did, and that I found those to be useful already. So yeah, that's that particular slide. If you go on to the next one, Alex. An upgrade is to Insights allows you, which involves an additional license cost, allows managers to see analytics about their team. So they then get information about how much time their team spends in long meetings and so on. Sorry. Yeah, how long their team spends in long meetings, and tries to help managers better, you know, organize their team and make them more productive and efficient.
I've got a quick question for Joe, actually. We've heard Microsoft Graph come up a couple of times. I don't know if it's worth just kind of developing upon the idea of Microsoft Graph and you know, how is it set up? Do organizations have it already? Yeah, just tell us a bit about Microsoft Graph, Joe.
Absolutely, yeah. So Microsoft Graph is something that is just there. It's part of your Microsoft ecosystem, and it's constantly learning and evolving how your organization and your colleagues and employees are using the Microsoft services. So you can think of it as a service that is looking at building relationships between people, understanding connections and how you use information across the organization, and then surfacing up relevant experiences in different places. So like John's showing you here, it knows that you're the line manager for someone, that you perhaps email someone or you chat with them using Teams chat, and therefore start showing you information that it thinks is most relevant for you. So it's not something you have to set up, it's just you use Microsoft services on a day-to-day basis. The Microsoft Graph just learns more and more about you, it evolves, and then just starts enhancing different experiences such as search, such as insights, such as various things that we're showing you today.
Cool, thanks, Joe.
All right.
Back over to you, John.
Yeah, so thanks. So I think that's it in terms of the other apps. Now I want to turn the focus to Viva Connections. So if you go to the next slide, Alex, yeah. So Viva Connections, as I said, is really that it's a connector. Really, it allows you to better integrate everything in your digital employee experience, in your digital workplace. So it works, for example, as a mechanism to deliver your intranet through Teams. So here we see within the Teams desktop interface, although it also works in mobile, as we'll see in a little while, you'll see that we've got a little tab here active on the left. It's a bit small, sorry, but it says entain.me. It is brandable. We'll come on to that a bit later and talk about that. But so yeah, you click that tab. It's basically loading Viva Connections app in Teams, and it loads up your SharePoint intranet homepage or your home site within the Teams environment. So people don't have to leave Teams. They don't have to go to the web browser. They get the full experience of their intranet in Teams. That's its, you know, it was its initial primary purpose to do that, but there are other things that it does as well. So if you go to the next slide, Alex, there's a component in Viva Connections called the dashboard that allows you to create these small tiles that we see at the bottom of the page here. So they can show you information from other Microsoft apps or indeed third-party apps, and display, you know, kind of nudges or updates or, you know, tasks that you need to perform and remind you about those things. And this dashboard can be added to any SharePoint page. Typically it's added to the home page of the intranet, but it can be added elsewhere. And so it creates this sort of, this this component that is a useful daily work tool for all users, or all employees, because it's personally relevant if set up correctly. And so it's something that makes the intranet homepage more than just a news and communication hub. It's more about, you know, your daily tasks and your other responsibilities. So that's something that Joe's going to show us more on in a bit. But the next slide, please, Alex, is then showing the mobile experience. So, you know, if you're in the Teams mobile app and you load up Viva Connections in mobile, it's a bit different. You don't see the full SharePoint intranet, which, you know, wouldn't be quite right in mobile format, but it shows you 3 kind of predetermined tabs, which are the dashboard. So that will show you the dashboard that you've probably put on your intranet homepage of tasks and updates. It will show you the feed, which is a feed of news, and also Yammer, if you're using it, updates that are personally relevant to you. There in the second tab. And the last tab is an opportunity for you to kind of create a menu that is like a, you know, I guess your global intranet navigation that links people out to other sources of information, whether it be, you know, policy information, or, you know, other departmental information, and so on. You get the ability to add that there as well. So it's quite a an on rails experience on mobile. It's always in this particular format. It may evolve Viva Connections for mobile to give you more control over what you see here, but you know, as a streamlined start, this is what it offers. And it does still give users on a mobile device a quick way to get access to, you know, relevant kind of traditional intranet type information. So with that being said, I think it's now time to go to another poll. Is it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the next section, Joe's gonna kind of demonstrate how kind of Viva dashboards can be put together, and how integration from systems outside of Microsoft can be enabled, and experiences can be pulled in. So we're quite interested to hear from you guys, the audience, what systems and processes you would like to integrate into Microsoft Viva. So there's a couple of options, and next to those options, I've put sort of examples. So it might be HR processes, so things like appraisals and feedback, operation tasks, so booking shifts, booking holiday, using a CRM, operation reporting. It could be just management reporting on operation tasks that have been kind of logged above. It might be financials, so things like expenses and pay slips and things like that. And then there's also another section. There might be things that we haven't mentioned in this list that actually you might want to use inside your or surface inside your digital workplace. So if you've got anything that's maybe slightly outside of the box, I guess, if you can add those into the questions, it'd be interesting to hear those, and yeah, we can maybe talk about those specifically in the next section. At the moment, we've got about 30% of people saying HR. Tasks, we've got 33% saying operation tasks, so things like booking shifts, holidays. There's about 12% saying operation reporting, and then there's about 5% saying financials, so things like expenses and pay slips. It looks like there's about 10% that have said others. So yeah, any of you guys who have kind of selected that others section, it'd be great to kind of, if you could post up what that is in the questions, then we might be able to come on to that later on. But yeah, an interesting array of different options there. I will close down that poll now. Any thoughts on those, guys? So it looks like at the moment the majority, it's just under 50% saying operation tasks, so things like booking shifts, booking holiday, using a CRM, things like that. Any thoughts on that initially?
Yeah. So I was just going to say, yeah, I think it's like the whole idea with Viva Connections is that it's going to be a place, like it's going to be a one-stop shop. It's going to be a place where you can do stuff easily. And for people like frontline workers, they don't know all these kind of different fringe systems that you use. So kind of creating a dashboard-like area where someone can go and just carry out their operational tasks without having to log into 3 or 4 different systems. I think naturally it's just going to be a good tool for those scenarios.
John, anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of one of the more common things that people want to do with those operational tasks. Also, normally high up there is the HR type stuff as well. But yeah, it's normally those two that are sort of leading the way. I think as time goes on, we'll probably see more companies use it for more like line of business stuff. So with that house builder example, initially we won't be having things that are involved like approvals on plans to build particular developments and so on, or sign off on costs for things like that. That will be handled by separate systems still, but I think eventually it's the kind of thing that could be pushed through into Viva Connections as well, so that you've got a truly one-stop shop. Initially it's going to be a one-stop shop for your sort of ancillary services, your support functions, things like leave, appraisals, expenses. But I think over time it could become much more of a line of business dashboard as well.
Perfect. Thanks, John. Well, Joe, I'll hand over to you so that you're able to share your screen.
Excellent.
There you go. So I've made you presenter.
Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So yeah, I'm going to walk through kind of a couple of demos today that we've created for the purpose of this webinar that just kind of outline some of the things we can do with Viva Connections. As John has shown you, there's multiple ways employees and organizations can view and surface up Viva Connections. I'm going to show you two routes. I'm going to show it to you kind of for a traditional SharePoint intranet. So you can see here on my screen, I've got kind of a SharePoint modern intranet, which shows off some kind of news and various components. And as I scroll through, I then come to my dashboard. So the idea with my dashboard here is that I'm showing an employee perhaps tasks that they've got to complete, perhaps information that's relevant for them. You see here, I've got 2 must-read documents. I can actually view what those documents are and open those documents. I can view information from third-party systems, so the TFL status. I can actually go and see which lines have delays on them at the moment and so forth. But actually, if I jump into the See All section, I can then see a full dashboard of Viva Connections. So I'll just jump across to a different tab here for that. And so this is kind of an example dashboard for me at my organization. And you'll see that it kind of rolls up information from potentially lots of different places. I can see the amount of holiday days that I have remaining. So this information isn't stored on our SharePoint intranet. It's actually stored inside of a separate system, ServiceNow potentially, and it's showing me how many days remaining that I've got. It's telling me that it includes 4 days I've already booked and when my next annual leave date is and when my annual leave allowance resets. Over to the right-hand side, it's actually showing me a pension statement. So it's showing me my current valuation of my pension. It's showing me that your pension has grown almost 14% in the last 12 months and why that's actually grown. I can see things like live data from share prices. We can also show information to users as well. So in this demo, I've got one office that I can view the details on, and it shows me a map of how to get there, the address. I can contact the manager for that location. So information doesn't just have to be kind of in the form of tasks and kind of doing things. It can actually show me kind of information as well. As I scroll through, I also get to do tasks. So here I've actually got a hybrid work check-in where I can check in for hybrid work. I can fill out my name, the date that I want to check in. So basically I'm filling out a form now, and this form then could potentially kick off a process. It could kick off an approval or could be sent to my line manager to do something with. So Viva Connections can be used as a dashboard to collect information for various reasons as well. And as I scroll down here, you see I've also got something called an expense approval. So someone has submitted an expense for some air travel and something else, and I actually then get the ability to approve or reject it. I can expand out the line items to see kind of what it was they did. I can add comments to it. So it's showing me a task that I, as a line manager, must complete. And then finally on the right hand side, it's showing me a view of my day, what my days got in store for me. So in 25 minutes, so at 3 o'clock, I assume that is, I've got a catch up on marketing with John and Kirsty. At 4 o'clock today, I've got a sales pipeline meeting with Jane. And then 5 o'clock today, I've got a team stand up with 9 other people. And I've received praise from Yammer for being an achiever and a coach. So it's kind of given me a good look at kind of what my day's got in store, what I've got to do today. Now, this experience here that this is showing me is obviously quite personal to me. It's showing me holiday days I've got remaining, my pension valuation, expenses I've got to do in your day. But what we can do further to this is we can actually target each of these cards. So we can actually say that because I'm a line manager, I see the ability to approve expenses, or because I work in a certain department, I'm not a temporary worker, I get holiday days, so show the holiday days card. So each of these cards that we're showing here can actually be targeted to groups of users to create a really kind of personal experience for Viva Connections. Now, I mentioned before there's 2 ways of getting at Viva Connections. So I've shown you the SharePoint route. We can also get at it through Microsoft Teams as well. So there's a dedicated app inside of Microsoft Teams that allows users, whether on desktop or on mobile, to access Viva Connections. And John briefly showed you the mobile one before, but you see here inside of my left-hand rail in my Teams client, I get a Viva Connections app, which shows me the intranet, but also shows me my dashboard too. Now, from an organization perspective, you can actually change the name of this application. So you can call it whatever you want, whether your intranet's called the Hub or Reach or whatever it is, you can change the name of it, and you can change the icon here. So now that you're delivering, or now you can deliver an app-like experience to all of your employees using the Viva Connection application. So some nice things you get there. Now, when it comes to kind of creating dashboards, it's really quite simple. Sorry, I'll jump across to this example over here. So if I edit my page, you see here it kind of takes me into an edit mode where I can then add different cards to my Viva Connections dashboard. And I basically have a library of cards available to me. So these are cards that Microsoft have built and delivered, but also cards that my organization has built and delivered as well. There's a whole extensibility platform here that allows you to create cards and create integrations with other systems and offer them out inside of dashboards. Microsoft themselves are creating cards and creating lots of out-of-the-box integrations with services like ServiceNow, Adobe Sign, DocuSign, Workday, and so on and so forth. But if you use a certain system, you can actually build an integration and a Viva card that you can then later on add inside of a Viva dashboard. So you see here, if I wanted to add a Twitter feed, for instance, I can add a Twitter feed, I can edit that card, and I can make it larger. If I click the plus again, I can do other things. I can use a card designer, which perhaps prompts the user to do something. If I make this large, and I can then say test title, click this card, and it kind of walks me through some simple steps to create a card that then ultimately has an action. If someone clicks that button, perhaps it takes us to our corporate website or to a specific news article on the intranet. So it's quite quick and easy to create cards inside of Viva Connections. And then once you're done, you can preview it on desktop and on mobile. So I can see what the mobile experience is like. As I scroll through, I can see what the desktop experience is like. And then I can publish that change. So now my dashboard has now got a card for this dummy example I've got down the bottom there. So creating dashboards is actually really quick and easy. You just have to edit the dashboard, add the cards you want, and then they're available to people who have access to your dashboard. So yeah, that's kind of my demo of Viva Connections. I'm now going to jump into some of the considerations that we've got to think about when deploying Viva Connections. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and Alex, I'll hand back over to you there for a second.
Thank you very much. Okay, hopefully you guys can see my screen now.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, before I get on to considerations, in fact, there's actually some just examples of other integrations that Microsoft are bringing out. So these are the ones they've announced recently. So integrations with Workday. If you're using Workday, you can switch on a Viva Connections card that shows you things like who your team members are, any expenses, holiday days, requesting time off, all of that stuff. Integration with Workday. ServiceNow, there's ways for you to raise tickets with directly within Viva Connections. So you see on the right-hand side there, you have pending tasks and the ability to view tasks that have been assigned to you. All of that can be done straight from the mobile app. You're not having to kind of sign into ServiceNow and jump between different logins and different systems. It's all there just kind of straight away for you. So some quite nice things. And I think lots more integrations are going to come. Microsoft are talking about kind of many integrations. Us as a company are building integrations for our customers as well. So there's a whole ecosystem here for this to just kind of grow and grow and grow. Okay, John, jump to the next slide for me, Alex.
Yeah, I've got a quick question here, Joe. Is it possible to add in external news sources such as BBC or even company news into Microsoft Viva?
Absolutely. So there's RSS cards already. So you can already add an RSS card, and BBC has RSS feeds. If your company website has RSS feeds as well, you can actually add that card in already. If they don't have RSS feeds, you can use a mix of a couple of things. There are cards that allow you just to kind of create like news pages that point off to somewhere else, like news cards that point somewhere else. So it's more static than kind of like the dynamic approach of RSS. But yeah, like you can build a custom card that connects to your company web part if you wanted to, your company website rather.
Perfect, thank you. I'll move on to the next slides, which are considerations.
Cool. So yeah, to take advantage of Viva Connections, you need to set up a SharePoint home site. So SharePoint home site is like the gateway into your SharePoint intranet. And that's kind of one of the hard requirements of setting up Viva Connections, is that you'll have to set up a home site. And for organizations who aren't yet moved on to modern, there could be kind of more considerations, because this does require the modern SharePoint infrastructure to be able to take full advantage of it. And also adding to that is that you're more than likely going to need to set up SharePoint navigation, so SharePoint Global Nav, because if you're rolling out the mobile app experience, as John showed you in those screenshots earlier, under the resources tab, it actually shows the SharePoint navigation. So if you don't set that up, you're just going to have a blank tab there that could potentially be confusing for users. And as I just mentioned, there's lots of partner integrations available now. So there's a lot of value to be had from Viva Connections right now. Yes, they're developing lots of things and adding lots of new features and integrations, but right now there's some good integrations with ServiceNow and DocuSign, Adobe Sign and Workday. So you can get kind of quite a good bit of value there. And if you're a larger organization that needs to utilize multilingual features, dashboards have just been released that support multilingual cards and components. So you can actually create dashboards in many languages. And as I mentioned before, if you're adding Viva Connections inside of Teams, you can actually add a custom name and logo for the app. So you're gonna have to think up a logo name and an app name and logo if you haven't got one already, or you can just use the out-of-the-box Viva Connections one. And finally, as John mentioned before, Viva Connections and parts of the Viva estate are free, but other components in Viva are not. There is a point where kind of it moves up and you have to start paying at a per license basis. Everything I've shown you there for Viva Connections is free as part of your SharePoint Online license plan. So if you've got licensed SharePoint users, they will be able to utilize Viva Connections in its entirety completely free. But other components inside of Viva, such as some of the learning stuff that John showed before, that does require extra licensing to be able to fully utilize it. Cool, and that's everything from me, Alex.
Excellent. Thanks very much, guys. So yeah, I think that's essentially the kind of the last section of our presentation. I wanted to we've got basically a questions section at the end here. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Ooh. Hopefully I should stop sharing my screen now. And we've got a question here, which is a good question. Actually, it would have been quite a nice one if I'd seen it to roll on from the Viva Connections section when you went through the dashboard, Joe. It says, how are dashboard cards different to web parts? Is it just that they have different integration functionality available behind them and that they're smaller? So yeah, what's the difference there?
So the cards, the Viva Connection cards, are actually something called ACEs, adaptive card extensions. These are kind of a whole language in themselves that allow you to kind of create a standard for delivering like cards across the organization. It does fall under the same kind of umbrella as SharePoint web parts. So if you're familiar with developing SharePoint web parts, you can actually go on and quite quickly deliver Viva Connections cards. So they utilize something called ACEs, adaptive card extensions, but they are delivered as part of the same SPFX packages and solutions. They get delivered to the SharePoint app catalog, and yeah, it's a very similar process to deliver SharePoint web parts, custom web parts, as well as Viva Connections components.
Perfect. Thanks very much. I've got another question here. What is the future of Viva Connections?
Yeah, for me, I think it's going to be a place where there's lots of integrations. It's going to be that one-stop shop for employees, whether they're kind of frontline workers or information workers across the organization. I think it's going to be a place where, yeah, it allows them to go and get a look at what they need to do across many different systems. It's not just kind of going to be the Microsoft world. It's now going to be touching upon the ServiceNow, the Salesforces, the Workdays, and just being that one-stop shop for users to see kind of what they have to do, what's outstanding, or if they need to actually carry out a task. Viva is that launchpad.
Yeah. Also, I think we'll see Viva integrated with the SharePoint app bar, which you know, Microsoft have pushed back the well, you can use it now, but there was a kind of a date, I think it was the end of March, where Microsoft were going to force you to have that app bar, which is that little strip down the side of the SharePoint sites. They pushed that back to, I think, October or something. But when that does come out, you know, that strip, that little kind of bar of apps that appears in SharePoint sites, I think that will probably have some Viva elements to it eventually. You know, you'll be able to maybe have your dashboard on a little clickable expanding area there. Maybe as well we'll be able to have, because I mean, Joe, you can only have one dashboard, can't you? So
yeah, one dashboard across many sites. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I would hope and imagine that there would be some ability to have more than one, so you can use different contextually relevant dashboards in different places. Maybe, you know, so if you go to a department page, for example, on a traditional intranet, you might see the HR one just has HR dashboard with HR relevant stuff on it, but they don't know for sure. And then, you know, maybe as well some degree of personalization by the actual user themselves, because what Joe showed, building out cards and things like that, is a sort of an administrator responsibility. They build out the dashboard by adding cards. I think that will become easier with more integrations as well. But the end user, I think, you know, they probably will be able to have some sort of personalization of the dashboard at some point.
Cool. All right then, guys. Well, I think that's just about it in terms of time. I think we should let everyone kind of go off. And people might have meetings at 3 o'clock. So thank you very much to the audience for attending. It's been great seeing your questions and showing you the stuff around Microsoft Viva. Thanks, Joe and John. Yeah, we'll speak to you soon and hopefully see you at the next webinar.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, guys.